Sunday, June 28, 1914. Early in the morning, Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his consort, Sophie, prayed at Mass in a chapel set up for them at their hotel. Leaving the suburban spa, they boarded a train to Sarajevo, a trip of less than half an hour. At the railroad terminal on the outskirts of town, they transferred to a motorcade in which they rode the rest of the way. The procession of chauffeur-driven motor cars entered Sarajevo somewhere between 9:30 and 10 o'clock, heading for the town hall. The morning rain had stopped. The top of the car had been lowered. That morning, Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb teenager whose career choice was to be a martyr, had stationed himself and his fellow conspirators along the Apple embankment at 3 places where it was intersected by bridges. The Archduke's motorcade driving along the quay would be running a gauntlet of nationalist assassins. At the first of the bridges, the Archduke's procession entered a kill zone. 3 conspirators formed a line along the river side of the quay and 2 on the land. The first attempt on the Archduke's life came from the riverside, from Angelico Kabrinovic, who asked a nearby policeman to point out which was Franz Ferdinand's motorcar. Then he knocked the cap off his bomb on a lamppost to detonate it. He threw the bomb wildly at the Archduke's motorcar, hitting the folded back hood of the convertible, from which it rolled off to explode against a wheel of the car following it. The Countess felt a graze on her neck from the detonator, while the occupants behind received slight wounds. Princip, who had heard the explosion and shouts from the crowd, hurried to the spot where it looked as though all was over. The gendarmes had Kabrinovic firmly in custody and were hauling him off to the police station. None of the other conspirators was to be found. Alone, Princip wandered back to what had been his appointed station on the riverside of the Apple embankment at what was called the Latin Bridge. He then crossed the street. Of the others, one was so jammed in the crowd that he could not pull the bomb out of his pocket. A second saw a policeman standing near him and decided that any movement would be too risky. A third felt sorry for the Archduke's wife and did nothing. A fourth lost his nerve and slipped home. Franz Ferdinand decided to cancel existing plans which called for his motorcade to maneuver through winding alleys on the way to the museum. After a stop at the town hall for a reception and speeches, he insisted on driving to hospital to visit Colonel Marizzi, who'd been lightly wounded in the bombing attack. The driver in the lead car was not told of the change in plans and turned off the main road toward the museum. When the mistake was realized, the Archduke's driver halted his car to consider how best to get back on the route to hospital. Meanwhile, they sat motionless, less than 5 feet from the dejected Princip. He was astonished at his sudden good fortune. He quickly seized his chance. He reached for a bomb in his pocket, but became aware that, hemmed in by the crowd, he could not swing his arm to toss it at his target. So he pulled out his pistol and fired 2 shots at point-blank range. His first shot hit the Archduke in the jugular. His second caught the Duchess in the abdomen as she was rising to her husband's aid. Princip then turned the revolver on himself, but was prevented from firing it by a bystander who hurled him to the ground. Confusion erupted as the crowd and nearby police battled one another to get at the boyish assassin. Princip tried once again to kill himself. Reaching into his pocket, he removed a capsule and swallowed it. The poison was old and only made the assassin vomit when it did not work. The mob closed in about him and began to beat him. Eventually, the police wrestled him away from the crowd. Meanwhile, the limousine fled to seek help. Sophie dear, don't die. Stay alive for our children," Franz Ferdinand called out. And then, more weakly, he repeated over and over, "It is nothing," as his aides anxiously asked how he felt. The first shot was fired at about 10:30. Sophie died at roughly 10:45. The Archduke around 11 o'clock. It was not nothing.